Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Loudguns and today I wanted to ask a quick question. Do we really want Star Citizen to be full loot? I know this is likely to be contentious, but my goal here isn't to make my comment section start to resemble Spectrum, it's just to have a discussion on a potentially interesting topic. I get to make the video, so obviously it's just my opinions at this point, but much like a good exam answer I feel I'll do my best to show my workings. I don't like living in an echo chamber either, so please feel free to chime in with your views down in the comments, because I think this is something that we should and can be having a really decent discussion about. Also, by all means feel free to pop into our Discord if you'd like to have a chat, and more generally if you'd like to get involved with a chilled out community and get some multi-crew experience. The link's just down below in the video description. So my very simple answer to the question is that no, I don't personally think StarCit should be a totally full loot game. But before you hit pause and start calling me a Care Bear Space Dad, just hear me out for a little nuance. I believe that a small amount of stuff should be protected. Specifically your armour and 1 or 2 weapons, potentially covering 1 long arm and 1 sidearm. Everything else I believe should be up for grabs. To my mind, stuff like cargo should absolutely be stealable. And if I've been a little loot goblin down in a bunker or a cave, then the stuff in my backpack should be yours if you sneak up on me and pop me in the head as I come out of it. I absolutely don't want anyone to get the idea that I don't want to see danger in Star Citizen. It literally makes the game for me. The risk of moving millions of credits of cargo across the verse, or of losing a prized artifact at the bottom of a pit on an alien moon, is a factor that's going to push players to group up and play together. To my mind, too many MMOs are individualistic, and forget the multiplayer aspect of the acronym. Players should be pushed together in positive and negative ways. There should be friction, but there should also be those moments where players help each other. And probably many of you have been playing games for years, and if you think back over some of your really standout experiences, I bet that they involve those moments with other people. All I'd really like to see, and believe will improve the game, is a degree of protection over our basest gear. In terms of the why, I think I've got 3 points from which to make a solid argument for this. First up is the convenience factor. I'm not advocating for SC to become quote unquote easy, but I don't believe that we should ever forget the main reason most people play games: fun. When you've got some time to play, you want to be doing content, running bunkers, chasing down bounties, heading out on a mining run. You don't want to be hoofing it between a couple of different stations because Everest Harbour has the armour you like but doesn't have a gun store. A small bit of loot protection limited to basic gear, potentially delivered through an insurance system where our items are waiting for us in the station inventory when we spawn in, would just greatly reduce this faff. Dying would still be painful, you failed the mission or you lost the mining haul when you blew up, but having to then run back and forth to get your basic loadout together again is the additional unnecessary kick when you're down. Second, and this is the one that really got me asking this question after trekking all over Stanton making my new player guide, is world building and immersion. If you spend any amount of time in the game, it's easy to see how a lot of players approach the risk of loss in Star Citizen. They almost exclusively dress in the hottest outfit since 3.15, the plain white beacon undersuit and horizon helmet given to you free when you wake up at a medbed. With 3.17.2 bringing in hangers in replacement to a lot of the existing pads, there's a fair chance that the beacon is going to be replaced as the most popular outfit in the verse, by the medical gown. I know people who have some of the coolest looking items in game, but they refuse to use them for fear of losing them. And it really makes me wonder, did the designers really put all the work into these for them to ultimately end up on the shelves of our hubs in the endgame, but just as nothing more than decoration? And StarCit isn't the only game I've played to face these problems. Before I got into SC, my main genre was hardcore PvP survival. I got pretty into a game called Last Oasis where we built these giant wooden walkers and used them to traverse a post-apocalyptic desert-laced Earth. Again, tons of thought had gone into the design of various armours and beautiful weapons, but the meta quickly became for large groups to roam around wearing nothing but a loincloth to cover their modesty, and carrying only the most basic wooden stick as a weapon. Having nothing to lose gave every potential fight a positive risk-reward. If you wore good armour and carried a sweet sword, sure you might win a higher percentage of fights, but when you lost, you actually lost something. In SC, this makes a bit of a mockery of some of these fantastic high-fidelity environments we have. We've got all these awesome locations which themselves have had hours of artistic design put into them, But when you awaken your hab and head down to the ASOP terminals ready to start your adventures, there's a whole bunch of folks dressed in exactly the same cheap outfit. Conversely, I recently played a game called V Rising, which implemented a system like the one I'm suggesting here. It was an open world PvPvE survival game, with a crafting system heavily reliant on looting and gathering from locations across the map. Your bag was entirely up for grabs, but your armor, weapons, and items that you had equipped in your hotbar were protected. And it led to so many awesome PvP encounters I lost count of them. Every time me and my buddy Kel were heading back to our castle, having run some bosses and got some sweet loot together, there was always that feeling where the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. You came across another duo coming back the other way, and everyone has that moment where they weigh the odds before deciding to go for the fight or not. But even when we lost and I woke up back in my coffin without any of the contents of my bag, I didn't have a bad taste in my mouth. I'd lost a bunch of stuff for sure, but I'd only lost the fruits of the last couple of hours' labour, and most importantly not the magic ring I'd spent days grinding the mats for. And this brings me on to my final reason, the appeal and popularity of Star Citizen in a crowded market of MMOs. I'm absolutely sure that someone somewhere has by now termed me a filthy casual for the opinions I'm spouting. I don't personally think that's fair, I prefer the term semi-filthy casual. But I do think we need to face facts and understand that Star Citizen, if it's going to be a truly huge game with significant longevity, needs casual players. And that those casual players need to be more than just victims for the hardcore elite, because we also need them to enjoy the game and stick around. Even the biggest MMORPGs out there are not particularly popular versus other genres of gaming, and those at the highest end of player counts are generally at the other end of the spectrum from full loot. Full loot hardcore MMOs simply aren't that popular. I'm not saying they're not fun, or I'm not saying that they don't have a place in the world of gaming. I'm simply saying they don't have the mass appeal of more accessible titles. And when we stop and consider the sheer scale of what StarCit aims to be, and when we think about the ships with 80-person crews and the 100 systems promised, each with planets larger than many entire games, it becomes apparent that the game needs to appeal to a mass market audience to work. I'm absolutely not suggesting that there shouldn't be content for a hardcore PvP focused contingent within the game. There absolutely should be. And there should be areas of the game where loss is painful, so you think twice about what you're doing. And maybe you rely on other people to help you out rather than just risking it for a biscuit and heading off alone. But I also feel concessions should be made, particularly where, let's face it, they don't make that much of a difference to anyone else, to make the game more fun for the more filthy casuals and semi-filthy casuals. I do want to consider a couple of the big blockers to this idea as well, because I realise it's got some issues. The two big ones as far as I can see are the promise that CIG made that all items would be available in-game, and the potential complications arising from duped items. One way for players who don't want to spend cash on store items to get their hands on them is to apply the law of the jungle to those who have. And once somebody takes the item off my body and they have it, if I then respawn with it, now there are two. Gamers are gamers and any loophole left is likely to be exploited. So at that point, what's to stop a friendly individual who wants to share the love, buying an item from the cash shop and then merrily running back and forth from the medbed to the waiting crew of people lining up to pop him in the head and steal his armor next? Now, it's not my favourite option, but one way around this is to simply bind the items to the player. You can loot unprotected items from a corpse, but not the bound items. This solves the duping issue, but not making everything accessible to everybody. But maybe that's where it stops. As long as the items are purely cosmetic differences and you can get versions of them just minus a little fanciness that somebody else wanted to part with cash for. I know that would involve CIG doing a bit of a U-turn, but it's okay for people to change their minds if there's a better way to do something. CIG could always just implement other ways to make the cash shop items available, such as making them rare drops in loot crates or on dead NPCs, that they then spread around the verse. I think something they could actually do is make sure there are some truly epic, incredibly rare cosmetic variations of armors and weapons that are only available to loot, and not available for cash at all. Potentially a halfway house is to make cosmetic variations of armor and weapons a unique skin, as opposed to a unique item. You kill me and mosey on over to rob my body. You can pull the Greycat armor off me, but when it goes into your inventory it's just the basic in-game version without the orange skin. I then awake and have a base set of Greycat armor and the skin ready to apply in my station inventory. And finally, CIG could just leave the ability to dupe the items in-game, but with some pretty hefty levers pulled to disincentivize it. If the protection was implemented through an insurance system, this could work similarly to real life insurance. If you drive sensibly and safely and then have a little accident, then your premiums might rise, but probably not by much. But if you make a claim every other week for a new windshield, you'd be paying through the nose until you got yourself blacklisted. Certain gaps could also be plugged, such as giving looted player armors a zero value for resale to avoid money-making exploits, and making the stolen armor uninsurable for the new owner. Sure, you've got access to the armor then, or the weapons, but not some of the advantages that come with buying it or finding it in a loot crate or on an NPC. And if things were implemented in this way, would it actually hinder sales for CIG or help them? If you know that you always get that armor back and you can actually use it without fear, then would you not be more encouraged to buy or find your own set rather than wearing a dupe of mine? So these were just my thoughts on this subject, and please, like I said, feel free to get in touch and let me know what you think, whether you agree or disagree with me. Regardless, a comment will also get you entered into our monthly giveaway for a Cutlass Black, so what's to lose? I hope you found the vid interesting either way. While playing an alpha game's not always the smoothest ride, one of the coolest things about the nature of StarCit is that we as a community get to participate in the discussion about what we really do and don't want from the game. CIG are obviously under no obligation to listen, but we can still at least contribute to the conversation. If you think I've earned it, consider dropping a like and subscribe. If you'd like to go a step further, we do have a Patreon, but honestly just watching, getting involved in the comments and sharing this vid with your grandma are more than enough. And with all that said, thank you very much for staying all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.